The train wheels screamed as the car slowed, but Evelyn Shaw barely noticed. Her heart thudded too loud for anything else. She clutched her carpet bag until her knuckles turned white. When the train doors opened, cold Colorado air rushed in, sharp enough to sting her cheeks. She stepped down onto the platform with shaking legs. Pine Ridge was smaller than she imagined. A dusty road, a few buildings leaning in the wind, a sky so big it made her feel like she had stepped into another world. Men glanced her way, curious or judging, but she kept her head low. She had come too far to turn back. Just weeks earlier, she had been on her hands and knees in Aunt Prudence's kitchen, scrubbing the same floor for the third time that day. Her knees burned, her back ached, her fingers were wrinkled from water. Aunt Prudence sat in her rocker near the window, watching like a guard. "Missed a spot," she barked, tapping her cane hard on the ground. "Lazy girl. Your mother would hang her head in shame." Evelyn stayed quiet. Speaking only made the insults sharper. 6 years under her aunt's roof had taught her that food and shelter came with harsh words and endless work. Outside the window, life moved on without her. Children laughed. Women in clean dresses walked together. Men chatted as they strolled by. Evelyn scrubbed floors and watched from behind dirty glass, dreaming of something she never believed she would have. Then the newspaper caught her eye. She was passing the hall table when she saw a page half folded. Something in the corner made her stop. She leaned closer. "Respectable rancher, age 32, it began. Seeks marriageable woman for life in Colorado territory. No cooking skills required. Only a heart that wishes to be loved. A heart that wishes to be loved." The word struck her like a warm hand reaching toward her. Someone out there wanted more than a servant. Someone wanted a partner. That night in the attic, she lay awake, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The wind moaned outside, rattling the house. She thought of other women who had gone west as mail-order brides. Some found joy, some found hardship. But what did she have in Philadelphia? A cold attic, a cruel aunt, and a future carved only from fear. If Aunt Prudence died, her cousin Harold would throw her out without hesitation. Leaving felt like a leap. Staying felt like chains. 4 nights later, she crept into the study. Her fingers trembled as she lit a candle and picked up a pen. "Dear Mr. Barrett," she wrote, "I am 18 years of age. I seek a life beyond cruelty. I have no dowry or fine things, only my willingness to work hard and my hope for kindness. If it is a home and respect you offer, I am grateful for the chance." She mailed the letter at dawn. 2 weeks passed in slow misery. Every time the post arrived, her breath caught, and each time her heart sank again. But one quiet afternoon, Martha slipped a letter into her hands. "It's for you," she whispered. "I didn't tell your aunt." Evelyn ran to the attic and broke the seal. "Miss Shaw," the letter began, "your honesty is welcome. Life here is hard, but I meant what I wrote. A man can build a life if he has someone to share it with. I offer marriage, a home, and respect. If you are willing, I will send money for your passage." Her breath broke in her chest. Someone, somewhere, offered not scorn but a chance. Before dawn, she packed her small bag. 2 dresses, her mother's Bible, a faded photograph, a tiny sewing kit. She left a note on the kitchen table. "I have gone to seek work. Do not look for me." Then she slipped into the cold morning and walked straight to the train station. The journey west changed her. She passed open fields, quiet plains, and towns where no one knew her name. Families rode beside her, chasing dreams. Other young women held their secrets close. Some looked as scared as she felt. Yet with each mile, something new grew inside her. Hope. Colorado hit her senses at once. A wide sky, sharp air, a land that stretched forever. Pine Ridge was small, but it was a new beginning. As she stepped off the train, clutching her bag, the wind whipped her hair. Men watched her. but she stood firm. Then she saw him. A tall man stood beside a wagon. His clothes were worn, his posture steady but unsure, his hat held in his hand. When their eyes met, something shifted between them. "Miss Shaw?" he asked. "Mr. Barrett," she answered, trying to steady her voice. He nodded, a bit nervous. "Welcome to Pine Ridge." She climbed into the wagon. In less than 2 hours, she would be his wife. A stranger, yet the first person who ever cared about the heart she carried, not just the work she could do. Ahead lay a small wooden house and a life she had only dared to imagine. The sun hung low as Thomas guided the wagon toward his ranch. Evelyn held her carpet bag close, watching the wide plains roll out in every direction. Grass rippled in the wind like waves on a quiet sea. Far ahead, a small wooden house stood alone on the open land. Plain, weathered, and tired. Yet to her it felt like the first place that might ever belong to her. They spoke little on the way. Thomas kept glancing at her as if making sure she was real. Evelyn tried to calm the trembling in her hands. In less than an hour they would stand in front of a preacher. She had never imagined her wedding day like this, riding beside a man she had met minutes earlier. But fear and hope sat side by side in her chest, fighting for space. At the church, the ceremony was simple. The preacher and his wife stood as witnesses. A man who smelled of whiskey lingered in the back. Thomas's voice was steady as he spoke his vows. Evelyn's voice shook, but she managed to say the words. When he slid a thin gold band onto her finger, she felt her breath catch. She was no longer Evelyn Shaw. She was Mrs. Thomas Barrett. The weight of it hit her all at once. Back at the ranch, Thomas pushed open the front door and stepped aside so she could enter first. The house smelled faintly of wood smoke. The main room held a rough table, 2 mismatched chairs, and a stove with rust along the edges. The place was clean but bare, like a life half-lived. "I know it's not much," Thomas said, holding his hat in his hands. "I meant to fix it up before you came." Evelyn looked around, taking in the empty walls and lonely corners. "It's peaceful," she said. A small smile touched his face. He carried her bag into a small side room. "This is yours," he said. "Your own space." She stopped in the doorway. "My room?" He nodded. "I'll sleep in the barn loft. I figured we should get to know each other first." Evelyn stared at him in surprise. Men back east never asked. They took. Yet here he stood, offering her privacy, offering choice. "You don't have to sleep in the barn," she said softly. "We're married." "And I'm not owed anything," he replied. "You came here out of need, not love. I want you to feel safe. When you're ready, I'll be here." It was the gentlest thing anyone had ever said to her. The first week passed in quiet steps. Thomas left before dawn and returned at dusk, always leaving breakfast for her on the stove. Evelyn cleaned, cooked, and tried to turn the empty house into a home. She sewed curtains from old sackcloth, washed the windows until they shone, and planted a small patch of herbs near the kitchen door. They spoke politely but carefully, like 2 people learning how to walk on thin ice. Yet Evelyn sensed something heavy in him, a grief he carried in silence, a hurt she did not yet understand. On the 8th day, she found him standing in the doorway, staring at the curtains she had made. Sunlight glowed through them, turning the room warm and golden. "They look like sunshine," he said quietly. Evelyn smiled. "They're just scraps." "My mother used to hang yellow curtains," he murmured, "back in Ohio." It was the first piece of his past he ever gave her. When he fell silent again, she didn't push. That evening, she ate supper on the porch steps while the sunset spilled across the sky in bright orange and gold. She had never seen anything so wide, so full of promise. For the first time, she wondered if she could truly belong here. She heard footsteps behind her. "Mind if I sit?" Thomas asked. She nodded, and he lowered himself beside her. They ate together while crickets sang in the tall grass. "You ever feel like the quiet is too loud?" he asked. Evelyn looked at him. Sometimes. Back home I wanted peace, but here it can swallow you whole. He nodded slowly. That's what my brother said. When he was still alive. Evelyn turned to him. What happened? Fever, he said. His voice low. We built this place together. He was the one who wanted to come west. After he died, this house didn't feel like living anymore. Evelyn felt her chest tighten. And that's why you placed the advertisement. Thomas nodded. I wasn't looking for a cook or a maid, just someone who knew how to stay. Silence settled between them again, but this time it felt warm, not cold. Over the next weeks, their quiet began to shift. They played checkers by lamplight. She read to him from her mother's Bible. Sometimes she caught him watching her, not like a stranger, but like someone finally daring to hope. Then, winter came early. The night the storm hit, the wind roared around the house like a wild animal. The barn doors slammed open. Thomas ran out to fix them. Evelyn fed the fire and waited, but too much time passed. Fear gripped her. She wrapped a coat around her shoulders, grabbed a lantern, and pushed into the storm. The cold cut through her like ice. Snow blinded her, but she pushed forward until she found him lying in the white drifts, barely conscious. Thomas! She cried, dropping to her knees. Blood had crusted along his temple. His breathing was weak. With all her strength, she dragged him back to the house inch by inch through the blinding wind. Inside, she warmed him with rocks from the fire, cleaned his wound, and held his hand through the long, dark hours. Don't leave, he whispered through his fever. I'm here, she answered. I'm not going anywhere. In the morning, his eyes opened. He looked at her with awe. You saved my life, he whispered. And something changed in the room. In him. In her. A new bond formed in that quiet space. One built not from desperation, but from care. The frontier was harsh, but hearts could grow in hard soil. For the first time, Evelyn felt she was not just surviving, she was living. Spring crept across Colorado with slow footsteps. Snow melted along the creek beds, grass pushed up in thin green blades, and the long quiet of winter lifted from the land. Evelyn felt the change inside herself, too. She woke each morning with a lighter heart, her steps steady, her smile easier. The ranch no longer felt empty. It felt like a beginning. Thomas healed fully from the storm, though a thin scar curved above his eyebrow. He carried it like a memory he no longer ran from. The space between him and Evelyn continued to shrink. He began to seek her company without excuses. At supper, he lingered near her, asking about her day, listening closely. In the evenings, they played checkers, and sometimes he read aloud to her in his slow, careful way. She loved the sound of his voice, soft and steady, grounding her like the land around them. One bright morning, Thomas saddled 2 horses and called to her from the yard. Come on, time you learn to ride. Evelyn stared at him in surprise. I've never done it. I'll teach you, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Buttercup here is gentle as can be. With Thomas standing behind her, guiding her hands, she climbed into the saddle. Her first steps were shaky, but he stayed close, steadying her as she learned. Soon she felt something she had never known. Freedom. They rode across the open land, wind whipping her hair, laughter rising from her chest without warning. For the first time, she felt like she belonged not only to the land, but to herself. They stopped by a swollen spring creek. Thomas spread a blanket and unpacked the lunch she had packed. Cold beef, bread, wild onions she had picked. He looked at her with quiet gratitude. Thank you, he said. For what? For making this place feel like home again. They sat under the shade of a cottonwood tree. Birds called above them. Water shimmered in the sunlight. Evelyn felt peace bloom deep inside her. But life on the frontier never stayed calm for long. In summer, long days and hard work returned. Evelyn learned the rhythm of ranch life, fixing fences, kneading stubborn dough, caring for animals. She learned how to load Thomas's rifle and how to read the sky for storms. She grew stronger, more sure, and then came the fatigue, the morning sickness, the late-night dizziness. At first she tried to explain it away, but when she counted the weeks, it hit her like a sudden wind. She was carrying their child. The realization filled her with joy and fear. She wanted to run into Thomas's arms with the news, but she also remembered the panic in his eyes the night he nearly died. She remembered the story of his mother, and she froze. Before she could find the courage to tell him, whispers reached her. She had gone into town for supplies when she heard two women near the fabric counter. "Mail-order bride," one muttered. "Just 18. The other snickered. "And now a baby to trap him for life. Wouldn't surprise me if she planned it." Heat rushed to Evelyn's face. Shame, anger, hurt. She turned away in silence, their words sticking to her skin like burrs. Back at the ranch, Thomas noticed her quietness. "What's troubling you?" he asked gently after supper. She hesitated, then chose truth. "Thomas, I'm with child." The room stilled. For a long moment he said nothing, then he turned away, breath unsteady. "Are you sure?" he whispered. "Yes." He paced the floor like a man trying to escape his own fear. Evelyn watched with her heart in her throat. "Talk to me," she said softly. He stopped and met her eyes with a look that made her chest ache. "My mother died in childbirth," he said. "I was 8. I remember every scream, every hour. I can't do that again. Not with you, not here, not without a doctor." Evelyn stepped toward him. "We will prepare. We will go into town early. We will stay near the doctor. But I will not let fear tear us apart, and I will not let you push me away." His shoulders sagged. His voice broke. "I love you more than I ever expected. That's what scares me." Evelyn took his shaking hands. "Then love me enough to stay beside me." He pulled her into his arms like she was the only steady thing in his world. "I will stay," he whispered, "every step." And he did. As her belly grew round, Thomas became fiercely protective. He carried buckets for her, kissed her forehead at night, and built a wooden cradle with his own hands. She often found him sitting beside it, staring at it with a mixture of fear and wonder. Winter came early again. The night the blizzard hit, the world vanished behind white walls of snow. And that was the night her labor began. Too soon, too fast. Thomas panicked when he realized they could not reach the doctor. Evelyn gripped his hand, trying to stay calm even as pain tore through her. Just before dawn, over the howl of the storm, hooves thundered toward the house. A knock shook the door. Thomas flung it open and gasped. Joseph, standing bare, stood there, snow in his hair, his grandmother Mary Two Rivers beside him. She was a skilled midwife, calm as still water. "We came as soon as we saw your light," Mary said. Together they guided Evelyn through the hardest hours of her life. Thomas held her hand the entire time, whispering love and fear in the same breath. Then, at last, a cry split the air. A daughter, healthy, perfect, alive. They named her Hope. Evelyn cradled her tiny warm body, tears falling freely. Thomas touched Hope's cheek with trembling fingers, then looked at Evelyn as if seeing a miracle. "You saved me," he whispered. "Both of you." Mary placed a small beaded charm over the cradle. "She is born between two worlds," Joseph said. "May she grow strong in both." When the storm cleared, sunlight poured across the land. Inside the small warm room, Evelyn lay, with Hope sleeping at her side. Thomas held her hand gently, the scar on his forehead catching the light. "You promised me more than shelter and a ring," she said softly. He nodded, voice rough with emotion. "And I meant every word." He leaned down and kissed her, their daughter between them, a bridge of new life. The girl who once scrubbed floors in silence now held her own family, her own home, her own future. And across the vast Colorado sky, hope carried her forward.